Life is three things. Life is a sales game, a numbers game, and a risk game. That's all it comes down to. Those three things.
Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Helping People Perform, where I talk to some amazing people who, in their various guises, help people perform at their best. Delighted to be joined today by founder and CEO from Donsfield. We have Dr. Pradeep Sacitharan. Sacitharan?
That's good enough.
Well, we'll get there. But Pradeep, absolute pleasure having you on the show today, and thanks so much for joining me. And I know from previous conversations that you've got an amazing story about not only your history but what you're doing now. So maybe let's start off with a bit of background as to who you are and what got you to where you are today.
Oh wow, yeah. First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity, and afternoon to all listening, wherever you are in this world. It's a question I get a lot on podcasts, and I'm like, where do I start? So let me condense it down because I've learned it to condense it down very quickly. So when I was 6, my mom approached me saying, "Hey, we're going to the UK for a better life. Here's your new passport." I was like, "Huh?"
Wow.
So very brave woman, smuggled me out of the country. It was Sri Lanka in a war zone. Got to England. Tough, but a very good upbringing.
Yeah.
You can't control your environment, particularly when you're young.
Mm.
So we grew up in a council estate. Around some very, very bad individuals, but luckily I didn't get into serious trouble. But I had bad peers and a lot of gang cultures around me. So
Right.
I got into a lot of fights, and I didn't do pretty well, pretty badly at school
Mm.
because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know careers and high performance because you're not surrounded by these individuals.
Mm.
So I dropped out of high school. I say I'm a serial dropout. It was my first dropout, and I worked in sales, 16 to 21.
Right.
I had the privilege of being a semi-pro weightlifter, so I had an early kind of sporting background, which my uncle instilled in me. So I was trying to be a weightlifter professionally.
Mm.
Weightlifting mean Olympic weightlifting,
Right.
clean and jerk and snatch.
Yeah.
So I had that going, and I had the sales training from 16 to 21. So Tesco, Clark's, um, hotels, bars, really learned cultures and people. Even if you couldn't afford to travel, London was like a eye opener to all the cultures.
Right.
But I still got in trouble, Paul. I was a bad boy. I actually get into a lot of fights, wrong mates. So at 21, I got into a serious fight, got hospitalized, was in a coma for 4 hours. I tell people I didn't see God, I didn't see angels.
Mm.
Just woke up and said, "Hey, something needs to give."
Right.
And so here's my the second stage of my life, 16 to 21 sales, 21 to 30, I was learning that life is a numbers game. How many phone calls can you make? How many clients can you get in front of? How many networks can you make?
Right.
So I started making phone calls. Hey, I have no GCSEs. I'm sorry I messed up. How can I get back into education? 3 phone calls. A woman, lovely woman called Janet Hudson, not the American singer, picked up and she goes, "Hey, come to University of Westminster." Uh, Went there, loved it. I kind of understood I can do this. So put my head down in my 20s. So I went from high school dropout at 21, Imperial College, a master's scholarship. That was 13 phone calls, by the way, applications.
Yeah.
And then by 24, I was a, Kennedy Scholar at Oxford, PhD in molecular medicine, 47 phone calls, applications. And by 27, I was a Fulbright Scholar at Harvard. That was probably two applications there. So
Mm.
numbers game.
Yeah.
But I put my head down, and that itself, that journey itself, had a lot of failures and struggles and so forth. By 27, I was the first in history to win the British, American, and Young Scientist Award all in 1 year. So I went from dropout to Oxford, Harvard in 6 to 7 years. So I was really implementing my sales training and my weightlifting training, short term, long term, medium term goal
Right.
into life.
Yeah.
And then the journey to Oxford and Harvard, defying the systems, defying conventional belief, really also got me thinking reflectively. Um, so then when I was 27, I said, hey, I might be good at this stuff. Hey, professors, can I have 300 million? And they said, no chance, lad. On your bike, off you go. It doesn't work like that. It takes 30 years. You do a bit of research, they'll go away. You do a bit of research, go away, get some money, come back. I said, to the hell with this,
Yeah.
because I saw friends who are seniors struggling in what they call a career in science. I
Mm,
said, hey, why should I? I have three reasonable drug targets that I hypothesized. I
mm,
can do this. So I dropped out, my second dropout from a traditional career in academia, and I made phone calls and I applied for short-term positions in America, at Harvard, in Paris at the Sorbonne, at the Hebrew University, outstanding institutions. So I
yeah.
went away for 3 months, came back. I was dead broke, everyone, by the way. Everyone thought I was this guy is amazing, he's talented, he's got the top five university on CVs. Dead broke because I was going away on short-term fellowships and learning stuff, very little money on fellowships, and you come back and you don't have a job, right?
Right.
So I learned all the experiences. I was traveling the world. I came back and I said, "This is great CV now. They must give me the money, right?" No chance again. So what do? I tap back. So I made 272 phone calls. So tap back into the philosophy. It's a numbers game. And one guy picked up in China. He said, I know you're 28, but the CV is good. Your ideas are good. Come over." Pack my bags straight away within 1 week, ended up in China. So in China, I became assistant professor, had my own lab. So 2 years after my PhD, I had my own lab, where it
Right.
might take some people 10 years to do so, 10 to
Mm,
12. So again, remember that accelerated high performance journey from a young age, I kind of implemented it now. So I said, oh, this is great. I discovered those drugs, all three drugs in 18 months, published the papers. Drugs for osteoarthritis.
right.
Oh, remember, the Western professors said it might take 30 years. We done it in 18 months, right?
Right.
With the right budget, right people and systems.
Mm,
And then I said, hey, let's drop out again in life, the third dropout. And I went into the business side of biotech, became vice president by 30 for international biotech, had 600 people across the globe under me. We done huge mergers and acquisitions up to, hundreds of millions of pounds. And I think the revenue was 1.6 billion.
right.
So I was 30, 32 by the time the pandemic hit.
Right.
So I said, okay, pandemic's hit. Let's go back to the UK. The CV must be good now. And I came back and said, can I have a job? They're like, no chance, son. Like, you're too young and overqualified now. And we can't fit you in the system. All our VPs are 40 and 50, which is fine.
Yeah.
And also, to be fair with them, it was a pandemic. It was very hard to get a job then because everyone's downsizing and scaling down. I'm like, okay, cool. I've done everything I wanted to do. There's no ego here in terms of science, academia, and so forth. Pretty high levels. So I said, let's start my own business because I was really enjoying the business side of things.
Yeah.
So tapped into easy entry, which I think was going trending up, which was e-commerce.
Right.
Started more e-commerce. That's how I got into my entrepreneurial business world. Started several brands, then transitioned traveling around the world, speaking on and consulting on e-commerce and also running my own brands. Done well there. And then what happened was went and I wanted to do my own first acquisition on my own.
Right.
That failed. The financing collapsed. So I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I said, "What am I going to do now?" So fourth dropout or fifth dropout. I
You
forgot now.
lose count.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so we transitioned the whole company into global commodities because I tapped into my black book of contact and said, "Hey, I said, Pradeep, we need help in oil and gas and metals. You know how global supply chains work. You're good with China, India, across Africa. Got connections because we've done a lot of business deals." So I said, "Okay, let's go." And now we're 18 months into global commodities. We signed some pretty big contracts, and that's who I am. I went from dropout to Oxford or Harvard, and I'm my own company, VP, assistant professor, with pretty much little help, but a lot of good mentors and
Right.
a lot of reflective philosophies.
Right.
And I think that's what the kids miss now,
Mm.
self-reflective philosophy.
Yeah. No. Fantastic. I mean, what an amazing story in its own right. And so, but what I really love is a couple of things. One, you having that reflection and philosophy, but the one define the logic and the conventional side of it. It's like just because it's been done that way, why the hell should I wait? Why should I be any different? Or why should I be the same as everybody? I can be different and I can get that goal. And that focus on the numbers, it's like if you want to do it, you've got to put the hard yards in. You've got to pick up the phone quite literally and see where it gets you and be prepared to say no. So, you know, what what would be some of your sort of key lessons that you've taken out of that into the success of your company at the moment and where you see things going?
Yeah, I mean, I addressed this it is a very broad question. So we can address it personally, interpersonally, team management, team leadership, uh, life goals, business goals, and so forth.
Yeah,
But I mean, the latter part of your question was on the company itself. So
yeah,
how do I was just back up, I just wrote a piece for the Oxford magazine, and I told the students, hey, I done it unconventionally. That how do you look at your goal in your company way beyond your lifetime? It sounds crazy.
right.
How do you have bold, historic, global goals, but be not competitive? You want to be in niches that are not competitive.
Mm,
Hey, I'm not smart as Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and these guys. I don't need to create my own Apple and Tesla and so forth. And we push our kids and our young people to get into the most trending kind of
mm,
uh, mm, fields.
yeah,
But we hardly look back what makes you're British, what
mm,
made British Empire good, what made success business good. So I looked back and said, it's commodities, and how can I now refresh the global landscape by doing commodities in a new ethical way, sustainable supply chains, and how can I break it down so we are actually doing some good as well.
yeah,
So that's the kind of hey, let's challenge a system in academia and elsewhere, but then how can I build a business way beyond my lifetime? And I always say to people, one thing I learned, you will never surpass your wildest dreams or your biggest goal.
right.
You always fall short, because when once you get near the goal, you get a bit lazy or complacent.
Yeah.
So the bigger the goals, the better you are in terms of landing.
Yeah, that whole shoot for the stars, and you'll certainly end up somewhere in the skies, won't you? And
Yeah,
oh, fantastic! No, I mean, so many great lessons for us all to learn on there. But I know in our previous conversations as well, we talked about that high performance element, the high performance mindset, um, and one thing that was really intriguing that I noted down from our previous chat was the fact that you noticed high performance behaviors in some of that gang culture as well. And
absolutely.
so, what's the sort of things that you saw in the gang culture and things where most people would say these are societal dropouts. There's nothing to learn from that environment. What did you take from there?
Absolutely not. So I love to reflect and I think back on what is a mindset. I always say, what's the mindset? And I tell people this. I've had the best lessons from elite drug dealers in Northwest London in terms of business to Nobel Prize winners, best scientists, and the best CEOs. And I always reflect back on these individuals. I'm not telling kids to do drug dealing, by the way. Drug discovery is fine,
Yeah,
discover medicines, but not drug dealing.
yeah,
So here's what I come to terms with. We talk about, fitness routines and the right lifestyle, eat what or not. That's all important. But the two things I think that differentiates the top 1% or
mm,
even the 0.1%, right, is ambition, which is coupled with risk appetite. And
yes,
notice, listeners and Paul, I did not say risk tolerance. I did not say risk analysis. I did not say risk management. I said risk appetite.
right,
How hungry are you to seek and find and take the risk?
right,
Right? That's where I differentiate that, and
mm,
that appetite only comes from the ambition. If the ambition is not fueling your bigger vision or your goal or the hunger, you won't be able to take that risk,
right,
right? And coming back to the gang culture, these are very at the leaders and whatnot. The EQ is very high.
right,
The ability to say, if I do this deal and what's the risk is there. So the risk appetite is high. And when I see that in leading scientists who say, hey, here's the conventional data, but let's take the risk. I might not get the next grant,
Mm,
sod it, let's just go and do it. Or the best billionaire CEOs, where is the risk in this deal? Let's just have to take it, right?
right.
So it all comes down to that risk appetite, and they identify risk very quickly and have a hunger for that appetite to attack it. Because usually that risk appetite is where most of the world is not touching it because they're scared,
Right.
or they don't want to go there, or they don't see it as well because the risk normally uh, hides the danger or the actual success and the reward.
Right. Yeah, it's only really a risk, I guess, if you see that there is a risk to take. If you don't even consider that that's an option, then there's no risk, is there? Because there's nothing, no decision to be made. So
Yeah,
that's intriguing, that one, because I think
yeah,
something we can all reflect on, isn't it? In terms of, are we going with convention? Are we not taking any risk, or are we being more risk averse in terms of our appetite to do something? And it's only when you really address those things, identify the risk, and go, that's worth it for me.
yeah.
That
Yeah, it
people can
is.
move
It
forward.
is. And
Yeah,
it's fascinating because I'm going to go on a guesting on a professional tennis podcast. God knows what the hell I'm going to say on that podcast next. But I was reflective on this and I want to share this.
yeah,
I always talk about you have data constructs. You are all the data that your five senses have
right,
accumulated over your lifespan. Nothing else, nothing more.
right.
And we all respect experience and wisdom, right? But like a tennis shot, or you serve down the line, or I don't know, you're F1 guy, you might the apex, you come on and the car kind of cuts the apex. But the best drivers have, or the best tennis players, or the best sportsmen have repeatedly hit that shot or that curve
Mm,
time after time. But that millisecond of, if I go an inch more, or a splice hit elsewhere, it might actually be better. But that's the risk appetite, right?
yeah,
That's quick computerization in the head.
yeah.
So I was thinking, it applies to all forms, even if you're doing a quick decision in the sports field, or if a business decision or a philosophical career decision, it's
Mm,
still the risk appetite is what, and the ambition is what it actually differentiates. The rest of it, IQ, EQ, leadership, management, all fits in. I
yeah.
think you can all, those are some things that people have or not or work on.
Mm.
But you really need to ask yourself the risk appetite, ambition, and where you're going with those two things.
Wow. I mean, what a question for reflecting on for ourselves. I know I'll be asking myself and challenging myself on this question as well off the back of this. So, and I know in terms of this element of helping people perform and tying that in, you've sort of really taken it upon yourself as well as building this business, on top of being the CEO and founder of this great business, you're deliberately going out into the world and sharing your message, particularly with young people, right? To inspire. And I think that was a great part of the story that got me intrigued and said, right, you've got to get in front of my audience, because it's
Yeah,
it's not just about having that for yourself. The value of taking that out and helping others learn those lessons as well, isn't
yeah,
it?
young and old,
Mm.
wherever in life, I'm a bald-headed, bearded man from Northwest London. I topped out so many things. I'm not that special, no matter what the CV says. And maybe I'm fortunate because I've had students from a very young age. I had my lab, and I was mentoring these students in an academic setting.
Mm.
I'm always intrigued about how minds form and how mindsets form and how you set a mindset.
Right.
So when you identify the talent's one thing, mindset something else,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So you got to tell your story, no matter what you are and who you are and what you've done, to get them inspired. Because I think true legacy is not what you leave behind; it's who you leave behind to set a bigger bar than yourself,
Wow.
right? Right? That's true legacy. I don't care if you're on statues or wall paintings and so forth on the wall, right? It's they look up to you and say, "Hey, I was mentored by that guy, or I know his story. I'm gonna go and beat this guy. I'm
Yeah.
gonna do better. I mean, with the resources he had, he's done this. I can do 10 times better." But that's how, I might be big thinking here. That's how the species move forward,
Yeah.
right? So if I can get all this done from a dropout GCSE, discover drugs. Imagine the kids who actually have the talent and the background from a young age,
Yeah.
but it's the push and the mindset is what I think it kind of restricts us. and the system that we're grown into. Particularly, it's maybe an English audience or your English as well. Particularly when you're very sophisticated Western culture, you have a system of things that have developed and regulated, and it works for us, our
Mm,
society, but also hinders us as well. And we can't judge kids by the GCSEs or A levels or their career at this stage or that age. How do you tell them to, hey, you got to push the system, don't break the laws,
mm,
push the system, and do better because
yeah.
that's what we really need.
Oh, I love that, and I've just I'm a sucker for jotting stuff down, but I think that element of what true legacy is, true legacy is not what you leave behind, but who you leave behind. Off the back of that, that's
Who you leave behind to set the big to raise the bar more
yeah,
than yourself.
yeah, that's wonderful. So you've been through various stages of your life that you've talked about, and there's been high performance involved at all levels. You've been performing not only for others, but you've also been performing for yourself and raising that bar for yourself. What are some of the things that you do that help you to continually challenge that level and to become even better?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, if you ask me personally, weightlifting is a big part of my life. I
Right.
go to the gym. I used to run a lot as well.
Mm.
Cut down the running, concentrating more on strength and power on my roots now in the last probably 2 years. Weightlifting is a big key element for me. I think there's some data out there from I think the American College of Sports Medicine, weightlifting and confidence boosts and boosts in mood, particularly when you lift heavier and heavier progressive weights.
Right.
It really does something if you start the morning or any part of the day. By the way, I'm not a big believer in routines because if you're very busy in high performance, you got to fit the workout. The workout doesn't fit you,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And that's why I spoke to a lot of high performers. I don't have the privilege sometimes. I wake up in the morning for a China call. I can't go to the gym,
Yeah.
but I fit the gym in 4 times, 5 times a week,
Right.
and I run in as well. So weightlifting, I think progressive weights and just mentally failing at the bar. I always say 200 kilos will always be 200 kilos, your best friend. It will tell you the truth. It won't lie to you. It's not your day. It's not your day.
Yeah.
So weightlifting is a key thing. Second thing, it's what I call rehearsalization. Some people call it manifestation. Some people call it visualization. I call it rehearsalization.
Mm.
The greatest joy, and you can call me a weirdo or whack job, whatnot. I have a coffee in the morning to myself. How in this 30 minutes, I don't have kids at yet. I have some time on my own. So
Yeah.
30 minutes, I just rehearse the day, my goals for the future, my goals for lifetime,
Yeah.
and I act them out. And sometimes my family walks in and thinks I'm an utter nut job, but it's helped me so much.
Right.
And I'm not going into the spiritual side of things in this podcast, but just executing, visualizing, rehearsing.
Mm.
Sometimes I have a big deal. I've rehearsed the deal out, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, why do we have TV show stars going through pre-rehearsal, dress rehearsal, and so forth, or sportsmen going through shots and practice and so forth? Why can't you rehearse your everyday business meeting, your, I don't know, your important, I don't know, family function or whatnot, where you
Yeah.
need to perform? Why can't you rehearse it? So
Mm.
I rehearse it, and it's been with me ever since childhood, from rehearsing the weightlifting, transition that. So weightlifting, rehearsalization. And the third thing is I'm very reflective and I've learned a system whereby if I feel fear, I'll say why and I'll do exactly what I'm thinking. So
Right.
obviously, if I think let's not jump off the bridge, I won't jump off the bridge.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like and over time, that fear rationale has depleted, and my risk appetite has grown because I say why straight away.
Right.
Why am I feeling this? What is the root data that causing me this? And if it is the actual cause, and if it's what is the analogy of fear? False expectations appearing real.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
So are these false expectations? What is the logical outcome? And let's do it. So those two things: weightlifting, rehearsalization, and analyzing fear.
Wonderful. No, I mean, just great stuff in there in its own right, and I love the on reflection, one of the most common themes through the high performers that I've worked with is reflection.
Yeah.
It's the ability to stand back and just look at what's happened, or to stand back and take the time to get ready for that next piece, and just reflect and say, what's going to work for me here, what did work for me in that situation, what didn't work, what am I going to do differently this time. um, yeah, and just spend that time. And I think it's doesn't require a lot of time and effort. Certainly, once you've got it practiced, but the
Yeah.
value that you get out of reflection is huge. And I love
Yeah.
those lessons, and addressing your fear. I think we all the worst. Nothing's going to be as bad as what you see things in your mind.
No.
Very
No.
rare. You always fear the worst, and it's generally never that bad.
Yeah.
But if you
And
can, I love the fact of just that element of you're not saying there isn't fear there, and challenging yourself. I'm not fearing. You're saying, why am I fearing that? What's in there? And then it's almost like lifting the curtains open, and seeing that there isn't a monster under the bed. And
uh,
you're actually
and
addressing it. Yeah.
and sometimes you got to walk into those rooms,
Mm.
and lift, remove the curtains or lift the bed sheets and see
Yes.
what's on the. You just have to go.
Yeah.
And this is particularly, I tell the kids, and it's never too late, but if you do it young, it's more helpful. But even if you're kind of older adult and so forth, just doing impossible things, it's very important,
Yeah.
because it allows your reflection to say, hey, I mastered this in this field.
Yeah.
It is not I don't say, hey, I'm smart, I'm good with people, I'm going to win in a totally different field. I'll say, hey, this is the system whereby I read or learned I reverse engineer from a goal,
Yeah.
right? I learn exactly what it needs to execute each goal to get the bigger goal.
Mm.
And I go and find a network of the people that can help me achieve every goal, right? For example, I
Yeah.
want to do a massive commodity deal that no one in my family or in the UK probably hasn't done for 200 years,
Mm.
because for this is a whole new podcast. UK business leaders, we need to get back into commodities because we're losing the war in this world. Anyway, we're losing the economy, seriously. Anyway,
Yeah.
so how do I do this? Brand new field, high performance, can't compete. So it's the banks, it's the supply chain, it's verifying the product, the simple things.
Mm.
Then how do I reverse engineer this? Who do I go to learn everything quickly? So what it does is when you expose yourself to coming from a dropout to a university,
Mm.
or a university to VP in business, it is not the new field, it's not IQ, it's the processes and the systems you've already implemented doing something hard in
Yeah.
a different field.
Yeah.
Because it's not mastering the field, you've mastered yourself, right? And then you go and master the field.
And I love what you said about finding the right people to help you do it. I think far too many people, a big part of why they fail is they're too afraid to ask for help or to pick up the phone and say, can you help me with this? And it's the people who take that step and go, who can help me get there, or help me get there quicker, faster, better, stronger,
Yeah,
that ultimately moves everyone to their goal. But it's a wonderful skill to have. So
yeah. Ironically, or side note,
yep.
most of the young people that reach out to me, fascinating, right, are not the first class students.
Right.
They're actually the 2-1 or 2-2 students, but they understand they can study hard, but they understand the importance of network. So,
Right.
I always listen to these individuals on the table, and I've been there, right? Obviously, I had good grades, but it's a different kind of personality that goes and seeks help
Yes.
and knows that he needs help.
Mm.
Because you know it's what you learn from others that's very important.
Wise words indeed. So, if you could help any individual or team or organization or entity with the skill set you've got, who would you want that to be?
That's a very hard question. One of the hardest questions. Um, Look, I've talked to CEOs, executive board members, CEO meetings. I talked to sports teams in the past. I've talked to young people. So those three areas,
Mm.
young people from uh, who are probably contemplating the career or what's next,
Mm,
to sports teams who've had all the traditional kind of motivational speakers and so forth.
mm,
I bring a wealth of odd backgrounds and melting pots into their kind of system and challenging them. And also CEO boards who I think the CEOs and executives, have gone through a lot of MBA training,
mm.
right? And it's good. You need MBAs, you need bright people, but they forget that conventional wisdom has been built up, but it's not that actually what makes them and their team move and tick.
Yeah,
Usually, they rely on conventional wisdom and data, but usually them the board itself, you break it down to individual, they're not very conventional.
right.
It's interesting when you challenge them, like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
So let's flip the question on its head a little bit and say if you could sit down with anybody and from that conversation you think your own performance could be immediately uplifted, who would you want that to be?
that's a that's a very hard question. Oh, oh boy, who would I sit down with? Hmm. Yeah, the way I answer these, people say, "Hey, who's your hero? Who your mentors, and so forth." I
Yeah.
I, I probably want an array of individuals if that table can stretch.
You can do that. I'll allow it for now.
Yeah, it'd be an array of people. So who would I probably and I actually someone did ask me that question, but I'll probably be an array of people, but also um time specific people, right? It'll probably be Steve Jobs after he was taking lessons walking across what is it near Stanford, to the local Hindu offering to get one free meal a day,
Right.
and then learning design work, right? And he had no idea how to start Apple.
Yeah.
Just after he launched Apple and he was successful, I'll meet him there and I'll say those early kind of design schools, how did it apply? How did it help you make the brand very simplistic,
Yeah.
right? Time specific, right?
Mm,
And also, you know, Bill Gates, there was a very good. So I'm doing business because I'm in business world now, right?
right. Yeah.
When he made a just after he made a deal for Microsoft DOS, it was actually not his own software. He
Right.
brought up someone for $50,000, by the way. So once he made that deal, the
Yeah.
next how he implemented it, because then what happens once you buy acquisition, it's not about, oh yeah, I brought it, it's fine, it's perfectly legal to buy. How do you put the people, places, and systems? Because it comes down to places and systems to scale that.
Yes.
I'm interested in how he scaled it after acquisition. So
Mm,
that period, Bill Gates,
right.
the branding of Steve Jobs,
Yeah.
uh, and probably I forgot the founder of the East India Company, by the way. I always say, we give very bad. I don't know who the founder of East India Company was, by the way.
No.
Um, I'd love to sit down with that East India Company board or board of members and how they designed the supply chain globally. We give them a very bad credit in this country and elsewhere, but they're the most pound for pound, most successful business operation there is. And how do you do that global supply chain networks, and how do you control the geopolitics around it? Because no one's got close to it.
Yeah. I'm doing a cheeky Google search while we're while we're talking there as well, and all I can find is it was founded under the rule of Queen Elizabeth the First.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
Yeah. So
uh,
it doesn't directly answer the question,
yeah.
but three or
No, no,
four individuals and what drives their high performance in terms of branding,
yeah,
supply chains and scale, and also global geopolitics and how to handle it, because that's where I am at the moment.
brilliant. And
And
I love how you've answered that question with very time specific versions of people. I think that's a new one for me, but
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's a crucial piece of the answer as well. So, let me ask you this question then: if our audience should take one key lesson out of this conversation today, what's one thing you'd love them to leave thinking or pondering?
Life is three things. Life is a sales game, a numbers game, and a risk game. That's all it comes down to. Those three things.
Wonderful. Brilliant stuff. I love a simple message, and that's about as simple as we can get, but it's so powerful at the same time. So, if people want to get in touch with you and find out more, then Pradeep, where can they go to get in touch with you?
Yeah, it's my full name, Dr. Pradeepkumar Sacitharan on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so please message me. I love to help people where I can when I have time.
Yeah.
If not, it's PK Sacitharan, which is my first two initial and my long name, which is very long. You can't miss it. So PK Sacitharan on Facebook, Instagram, and other social and Twitter as well.
Right. Fantastic. And as always, we'll put those links into the show notes so that people can easily reach out and connect with our amazing guests. And what an amazing conversation and such great insights, a wonderful background story, and so many insights that we can take and lessons for the future and for all of our situations today. So thank you so much for being on the show today, Pradeep. And just an amazing set of lessons from Dr. Pradeep Susi. I'm going to get this right. Sacitharan. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. And thank you, everyone. And good luck to all.
Thank you so much. Cheers. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review, and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.